Hey everyone, welcome to your lecture on rhetorical analysis. So, why are we learning about this, you might ask? Aside from just because you have to write a paper that is a rhetorical analysis on a TED Talk, this skill is something that's really important for you in school and beyond. Because you're always going to be in situations, you're often going to be in situations where you are either in a position that you need to listen to someone speak or read something and make a judgment about whether you believe it or whether you agree with it, or whether you're going to do the thing that someone is trying to persuade you to do. Or you're going to be in a situation where you need to be the person who's trying to persuade someone of something. And that happens in all kinds of situations in our lives. I mean, probably every day you are making some kind of persuasive argument about something or listening or watching or reading someone else's argument. You just don't realize it. It happens in commercials all the time. Companies are trying to get you to buy a product or donate money or vote for a specific candidate. And they're doing that in ways that are persuasive. And so you being able to understand the tools they're using and how they're working to persuade you will help you decide if you're buying what they're trying to sell, right? Sometimes those strategies are really effective and powerful. Sometimes it's pretty clear that they're maybe overemphasizing some things or leaving some things out to try to get you to feel a certain way or do a certain thing. And so, whether it's a commercial or someone yelling about something on social media or you making a choice on who you want to vote for, all of these things and many, many other situations where it's going to be important for you to understand how someone is trying to manipulate you to do the thing they want you to do. So, that is the basis for understanding rhetorical analysis. Rhetorical analysis sounds like a big, scary concept, but really it is not. So let's break it down. What is rhetoric? Well, rhetoric is simply the art of persuasion. It is how you get someone to do a specific thing. And we're going to talk more about argument later in the course, so we're not so worried about argument right now, but just persuasion in general. Persuasion can happen even if the topic is not specifically something you want to argue. So it doesn't have to be like a big hot topic issue that you're arguing. It can be persuading someone to do something for you. It could be persuading, for example, for me, I might need to email my kid's teacher and try to get them to make sure that his accommodations are met, for his IEP or something like that, right? It doesn't have to be a big argument. It could be something more subtle than that, but persuasion happens all the time. So rhetoric is simply the art of persuasion, how we try to persuade people. It can be in writing, it can be on screen, it can be speaking. It happens in a lot of different ways. And then analysis is really just looking at the pieces that make up a whole. So that's just explaining and examining something, breaking it apart and examining how it's done. And so a rhetorical analysis is simply you taking a piece of media, in our case it'll be a TED Talk, and figuring out how the speaker is persuading the audience. What tools are they using? What techniques? What tactics? What are they doing to try to persuade? Um, the first part of this, and this is why we covered this earlier in this unit, the first part of really understanding this and being able to analyze it is understanding what the purpose of that piece of media, TED Talk, is, um, and who this person is trying to persuade. So, audience and purpose, we talked about audience, purpose, and tone. Those are the key kind of basic elements, along with historical context, that will help you understand better how to analyze your piece of media, whatever it is. For example, if I give you a TED Talk, or let's say I give you a commercial and I have you analyze it, if you don't know who the target demographic is of that commercial, your analysis, maybe you'll assume that it's one group of people, but really it's a different group. And so your analysis, whether you think it's effective, is going to be very different if you don't have the audience right? If you haven't thought about that. So, looking at, and there's always an intended audience. So you could say, like, well, anyone watching TV could watch this commercial, and that's true. But the people who made that commercial had a specific demographic in mind. They had a specific target audience of people who were likely to buy their product and that is who they were thinking about. So think about car commercials for minivans. Who are they speaking to? Probably not middle-aged men who have are having some kind of midlife crisis, right? That's not the group of people that buys minivans. Probably that is going to be geared toward families and parents with young kids and lots of things to haul around, lots of kids and equipment and things like that. So every time we try to persuade or we have any kind of persuasive piece of media, we're looking at a specific audience. And that is the first thing you want to try to figure out before you figure out what tactics they're using and whether they're effective. So, after you have figured out the audience, purpose, tone, and the historical context of a thing, then it's time to dive into what rhetorical strategies they're using. There are three that we're really going to focus on here. And I'm right now reading through your text section on rhetorical analysis, which is part of your homework for this week. But the three things you really want to focus on are ethos, pathos, and logos. And I may actually have pulled up the wrong piece here. So give me 1 second. Okay, I've got the right page pulled up now. So really, actually, I'm looking at the other thing you're supposed to read for this week, which is chapter 3, the rhetorical situation. This is where you look at audience purpose. This exigence we're not really going to get into, but basically, it's just the thing that the speaker is trying to fix, the problem they're trying to solve. Basically, is what we're looking at there. And genre refers to the type of writing or the type of publication that you're looking at. So for TED Talks, you're all looking at the same publication, the same kind of general audience. But if you're looking at an article, you might be looking at whether that article is a peer-reviewed academic journal article, or is it a news piece from a newspaper? Is it an op-ed from a newspaper? So depending on what kind of writing it is, that really impacts how the writer uses strategies and what you want to get from it. So we don't have to worry so much about genre for this particular project, but it will come up later in the course. So the three things I want to focus on are persuasive appeals. So this is chapter 3.9, if you want to pull it up and follow along. You can read this part on your own, but there are the three type of appeals we want to focus on, and this is what you're going to talk about in your own project, are logos, ethos, and pathos. Latin terms. The only thing you have to remember really is that logos appeals to logic. That's the easiest one to remember because of the alliteration. So for logos, the commercial or the TED Talk or the speaker is appealing to logic and reason. Of course you want to buy this thing. It's clearly the best product, right? It clearly will do the thing you need it to do. You need this, and here's why. Or you need to take this call to action, and here's why. Pathos appeals to emotion. You think about pathos, pathology. There's lots of terms here that stem from pathos. So here you're appealing to emotion and imagination. So imagine a commercial. I'm sure you've all probably seen commercials for donations for like PETA, for donations for rescue animals, and how they are full of sad music and pictures of emaciated dogs and dogs chained up outside in horrible conditions. Right, that is clearly an appeal to our emotions. That is a really strong example of pathos. Ethos appeals to the credibility and character of the speaker. So you should listen to me because I'm an expert, and here's why. That is what ethos is doing. Many times these commercials, these speeches are going to use all three tactics. But one may be stronger, maybe obviously the strongest or the most powerful and most effective one that they're using. So let's take a look at some examples of these. First, I'm going to show you an example. I won't tell you which appeal is the clear winner here, but I think you'll know as soon as you start watching it.
I can't forget this evening or your face as you were leaving, but I guess that's just the
I love this commercial because I happen to have a dog that looks like this. And now I think I have to get her a hot dog costume.
Smile, but in your eyes your sorrow shows. Yes, it shows.
It's hard to resist great taste.
Drive.
Okay, so do you think that that commercial is using ethos, pathos, or logos? Hopefully, you said pathos, which is the appeal to emotion. That commercial is all emotion, right? It probably made you smile, maybe made you laugh, maybe made you say, "Oh, that's so cute," right? That commercial, which is funny because it is for ketchup, right? It's for Heinz condiments, is really, really going into the emotional appeal of the product, and not even of the product, but just of the sort of fun idea concepts that you can get from the product itself. So that's a clear example of pathos. So let's go to the next one.
Hi, Phil Swift here for Flex Tape. The super strong waterproof tape that can instantly patch, bond, seal, and repair. Flex Tape's triple thick adhesive welds itself to the surface, stopping the toughest leaks. And new Flex Tape Clear creates a super strong watertight seal. Flex Tape Clear is virtually invisible, perfect for all types of repairs. Flex Tape is super strong, and once it's on, it holds on tight. And Flex Tape Gray can patch large cracks and holes. To show you the power of Flex Tape.
All right, I think we've seen enough of this one. So what do you think? Is this ethos, pathos, or logos? Hopefully you're thinking it's logos. It's not ethos because that one appeals to the credibility of the speaker. And other than his name, we don't know anything about this guy or why he's an expert or should be an expert, right? He's really just the announcer. But this one really appeals to logic and reason. Look at all the things this tape can do. Watch it seal this leak. Watch it fix this crack over here. You can clearly see that this is a tool, this is a thing that you need in your life, right? So that is a clear appeal to logic and reason. Of course you need this tape, right? It fixes everything. All right, so finally we'll look at the last one. You'll be able to tell pretty clearly what this is an example of.
How much pressure do you have to perform from day one?
There's no pressure. There's no pressure at all. I've been getting pressure since I was 10 years old. I'm doing something that I love to do. That's play the game of basketball. Y'all like to watch me play basketball. It hasn't kicked in yet to what I'm getting myself into. I'm not going to guarantee no championship. I'll tell you that.
Back-to-back titles for 52 years.
I just hope that they accept me for who I am as a basketball player and especially as a person. I know how to be a leader. It's just a long-term, I always tell y'all that this was one of the long-term dreams I always had. That's just playing in the NBA.
From St. Vincent St. Mary's High School, LeBron James.
Imagine being.
All right, do you notice how in that commercial, that's a clear example of ethos, right? They are using LeBron James there as the expert, not necessarily a sneaker expert, right? But if he can win all these championships and he can do all of this amazing stuff and he's wearing Nikes, there's got to be a connection there. That's what they want you to think. And so that one is a clear appeal to credibility of LeBron James as the spokesperson for Nike. Other really obvious examples of ethos are, if you can think of a toothpaste commercial where you've got a bunch of dentists talking about how they always recommend that toothpaste to their patients. That's another clear example of ethos, right? You've got the experts, we're wearing white coats, we know what we're talking about, and we use this product ourselves, and we recommend it to our patients, so it must be great. So those are clear examples there. That Nike one is especially interesting because they don't really talk, I don't think they really talk about sneakers at all in that commercial. They certainly show them while he's in the clips of him playing. but they kind of let you make this connection that greatness and winners and being the goat is tied specifically to a sneaker, which is an interesting way to think about it. Um, and I think that one also uses a little bit of emotional appeal because you do kind of feel something when you're watching this and seeing how great, how his path went from being a kid to being, the greatest of all time. So I think there's certainly some other elements to it, but it's a clear, definite ethos example. So the things that you watch, the things that you read are not always going to be that obvious. I wanted to show you examples that were really obvious to get you thinking about it. And also, some commercials are going to have all three of those things tied together. They're going to weave between all three tactics. They may all be equally powerful. They may all work together to get you to believe the thing that to achieve the purpose that the speaker wants. So these are all important things to think about as you're watching ads on TV, as you're listening to people speak. Always think about what they're trying to do, how they're trying to persuade you. Just an aside here, I wanted to give you a quick example. As I was planning this unit, this timing couldn't have been more perfect. I was sitting at home working on the class, and my son, who's 14, came in with his friend, and they started to make a plea to me about how I should buy my son this e-bike. And their reasons were hilarious. They were working very hard together to try to get me to give him several $100s towards an e-bike. They started by, and they went through they don't know anything, they're 14, they haven't learned about this yet, but they went through all three of these appeal strategies in the span of a 5 or 10 minute speech. They talked about the safety features of the e-bike. They talked about how they would ride it to school, so we wouldn't have to give him rides anymore. They wear helmets, and so it will be safe, and it will be convenient for me. So they went through all the logos, the logic and reason. They went through the ethos, the credibility, because my son does know a lot about these kinds of bikes, and so he talked about how he could fix it and how he knows everything that he needs to know about it in order to make sure it's safe and running effectively and all of that. And when none of that seemed to work for them, they appealed to my emotions by saying that if I didn't let him get this bike, he wouldn't have a childhood. That I needed to let him have a childhood because he wants to be able to ride this bike around with his friend. His friend already has one, so now he needs one. And it was hilarious, and I did not give him several $100s for that bike. However, I did talk to him and give him some ideas as to how he could probably end up getting that bike on his own. And good news, he ended up finding something on Facebook Marketplace that was within his budget, and he did, in fact, get a bike. So it worked out in the end, although he didn't quite get exactly what he wanted from me. He did ultimately get the bike. And so I guess you could say that his purpose in some ways was effective. So that is just one of many, many, many examples of people trying to get you to do things and using these tactics without even realizing it. All right, so now that we've learned about these tactics and these appeals, it is time for you to practice. So you are going to need to watch your TED Talks again and think really, really hard about how your speakers are using these appeals in their talks. You're more than likely going to see all three, and you want to mention all three in your talk, but think about the one that is most prominent or most powerful, most effective, and why you think that's the case, and that will be another thing for you to discuss in your paper. You're also going to practice this a little bit more in our discussion for week 3, where I'm going to give you another commercial to watch that actually is a longer commercial, and it really covers all three appeals. So I want you to watch that and think about how it uses all three and how it kind of weaves them together into this narrative that I think is really effective, but I'm interested to see what you think. So you'll practice there, and then you'll practice as you get your rough draft going. As always, if you have questions, please reach out. There are tons and tons of other YouTube videos out there on ethos, pathos, and logos. So if you're still not quite sure about it, feel free to look those up and watch them. Or if you need some ideas or some references, let me know, and I'd be happy to send you a few links. All right, good luck. Have a great rest of your week.